So really wonderful to have you here today for the third session in the Invitation to Fulfill Your Potential in Life series. And this is really, for me, the most interesting subject of all is how we fulfill our potential in life. And I'm going to go through a brief summary of the previous sessions, so you can get a sense of what we've been talking about so far. Um, but and then we'll get into the topic of today. So, how do we include our vulnerability in our difficulty? That's the key topic of today, and it's a part of this whole series on fulfilling our potential in life. And in the first session, we looked at life as a journey, life as a journey of fulfilling our potential, of evolving ourselves psychologically and spiritually, making the most of our lives, using psychological resources to make the most of our lives. And then, but we also talked about life as being. So, and I call that life as music, because when you listen to a piece of music, you're not trying to get to the end. You're trying to enjoy the note, the rhythm, the sound, the chord in the moment, the way it touches your soul in the moment, to get to the end of the piece. So much of our life is about self-improvement, plans, projects, making things happening, becoming the best that we can be, healing ourselves. There is this other dimension of life that is equally as important, which may in fact even be more important, which is that to really access the present moment, because the present moment is the only thing that's truly real. Most of what you know, all of what you know from the past is memory, whether it's neurons in your brain or some sort of collective memory in history books or museums or other cultural forms that give us a sense of history. And the future doesn't exist except in our hopes and our dreams. We have no idea at all whether we're going to survive the next few minutes. There may be no future at all, in the way that we expect for the future. So the only thing that's truly real is this sensory experience of the present moment. And even then, that sensory experience is mediated through nerve endings that really reduce the information by the time it reaches the brain. But if we pay attention to the present moment, it's a portal to a whole new level, which is beyond space and time. And it's really important at the outset to say that we don't have to spend our whole lives improving ourselves and fulfilling our potential. Sometimes we can just sit and look at the trees, swim in the ocean, look into the eyes of children, hold the hand of an old person, and just really be in the present moment. And that's equally valuable to life as a journey. And then last week we looked at giving my gift to the world, which is actually a bridge between life as a journey and life as being. The great mountaineer said, the goal is the great mountaineer Reinhold Messner, who climbed Everest without oxygen. He climbed it solo. He climbed it alpine style. He did all the high peaks of the world. And he said the goal is not to reach the utmost limits, but to find the place that has no boundaries. And life calling is a bridge between the two. If you give your gift to the world, if you follow your life calling, you will reach a place where it takes you into a sense of what existence is about in and of itself. But as we said last week, the research says that people who follow their life calling are more successful than any other sections of the population. Some people work just for money. Some people work for ambition to be the top of their career. But the people who work for love, who do what they love, are more resilient, going to be more successful or more likely to be successful, have better health outcomes, live longer. There's a whole range of different things that come with fulfilling your life calling. And of course, your life calling applies in terms of your gift to the world professionally and post-career in your, in what you give to the world after you've finished your career. but it also equally applies to your relationship with yourself and your relationship of love, friends, and community, the other dimensions of life. And that was really the topic of last week. And if you find that interesting, then of course the video is available on the email that comes out every Saturday at 6 o'clock. So, we want to make the most of ourselves in life. We want to make the most of our psychological resources. We want to give our gift to the world. But we also face difficulty and suffering. And that is the topic of today, how we face vulnerability, difficulty, and suffering. And it's really a simple model, in a way, that we have emotions about things from the past, and connected with those emotions are very often disempowering beliefs. Something happened in the past that was more than just painful, but created some sort of sense of disempowerment or lack of belief in ourselves or lack of our belief in the world. There's a country, I'm not going to name the country, but there's a country where the first question that people ask you is, how much money do you make? And the reason for that was that there was a time in the country's recent history when people were so poor, professional people became so poor, that really they were hardly able to survive. And that making money just became the most important thing. So that could be a belief about the world. And then for the rest of your life, even if you're making lots of money, you're then saying, how do I make more money? How do I make more money? But the more common ones are like, I'm not good enough, or I'm not lovable, or I'm not competent. We can get disempowering beliefs from experiences in the past that disempowered us. And healing, transforming, and changing those disempowering beliefs help us to fulfill our potential in life. What holds us back from fulfilling our potential in life often is those disempowering beliefs. So sports coaches to the top Olympic athletes, someone called Lanny Bassam in particular, has a model that says you've got to have a goal that you want to win gold at the Olympics. You've got to have that as a goal, and you've got to have to do the training necessary to be able to perform at world record time or height or speed, at a world record standard. But you've also got to have the belief that that is possible for you, and you won't perform better than what you believe about yourself. And so that's the training that they give to Olympic athletes. And the same is true for us. We won't be more successful in life than we believe is possible for ourselves. So that's where the psychological and spiritual tools become so important. And there is the belief aspect, the cognitive aspect of the wound, if you like, and there is the feeling aspect. And some schools of psychotherapy overly were about feeling the feeling again, feeling the old feeling. Humanistic psychology could really has a danger of repeating the old feelings and just being in the feelings. And some of the more rational psychotherapies, such as CBT and rational emotive therapy, or superficial use of things like NLP and other similar modalities, can just focus on the belief, the cognitive part. But actually you have to change both. We all know about saying positive affirmations, but you can say positive affirmations until, again and again and again, and it still doesn't change the feeling in you. So you have to work with both of those two elements. And what we're going to do today is we're going to do a meditation in which we learn to be the wise adult mind and the warm, tender heart for the places in ourselves that feel pain, that need transformation, that are wounded, that are hurt. And the technical word for this is being a sponsor, to become a sponsor for yourself. But this really sort of intrinsic, important idea that many of us were wounded in our childhood and in our early lives. Our society is not really designed anymore for good quality child rearing. In the old days, when we all lived in villages, there was not only your parents and your grandparents, but all the other villagers there to help bring love and tenderness and connection and training to the children. I was talking to someone yesterday who said that there was he'd been talking to an African friend of his, and the African woman said, in our tribe, the father just loves the child. It's the uncles who do the discipline. You know, what a great method. The father can just be loving, but the people who do the discipline are other members of the community. So most of us have not been properly parented. We haven't been really loved consistently and supported and seen and believed in and accepted and welcomed all the way through our childhood, and also our early teenage years and early adult years as well. And so a big part of the key healing process is to learn to become that sponsor for yourself, loving, kind, generous, supportive, and not criticizing yourself. And many people will have picked up bad habits from family members who criticized you or who didn't believe in you. When the beauty of a child, of the learning process of a child, is that they just learn everything that their parents teach them, or learn everything that their carers teach them. All the great stuff, but also all the bad stuff as well. And then we end up being self-critical, self-judgmental, or having all of those things that we've just taken from our carers without really considering whether they're useful or not. So this sort of reparenting process, this sponsorship process, is what you learn to do to transform your psychological obstacles into resources and into gifts. If you do enough healing work, those psychological difficulties, those vulnerabilities, you will have learnt not only from the healing process, but you will have also learnt about what it was that those difficulties, they will have taught you things themselves. Those experiences will be a gift. So, for example, my mother went back to work within a week, and I didn't bond with my mother, and there was a succession of carers, and that created a very difficult relationship with my twin brother, because we were competing for a limited resource, which was love. I used to see my mother once a day for 10 minutes, and all of that was very, very wounding and created big issues for me. But all of those big issues took me into personal development at the age of 15 and into psychotherapy in my 20s. I wouldn't be the man I was today if I hadn't had those experiences. So even though they were very painful experiences at the time, those experiences are a part of what helps me give my gift to the world. They're connected with my life calling, which is helping people blossom. So in the process of change, there is also the need to not only sponsor yourself, but to have, it's really helpful to have a peer group member or a therapist or a coach or a guide see you and say, I love you, or I see you, I care about you, I believe in you, you're important. And in fact, one of the most important psychological resources is those people in our lives in the past who have said, I see you, I believe in you, I care about you, you're important. And so all of that is a part of the psychological transformation process. And we're going to do a meditation on this today. So we develop our psychological resources that include life calling, that include remembering everyone who's ever believed in you, cared about you, supported you. Remembering all the moments of your life when you were in flow, when you were successful, when things were going well. All of those moments when it was really working, and remembering all of those and having access to all of those memories are your psychological resources. And also we can talk about your cultural resources? Who are the people in your family who believed in you? And what are the great things about your culture? And sometimes people have to go back 1,000 years, to find people in their culture or in their lineages that were resources. But we have all of our ancestors as a resource. We have nature as a resource. And we have spirit as a resource, which I show that as a separate line, but really you could say we have resources, and some are of spirit and some are psychological. Psychological is very much from your own internal experience, from your life. And spiritual is some connection to archetypal form, to saints or Buddhas, or images of the universe, or that support you, that you are, where existence is an ocean, and we're a little wave in the ocean of existence. And this little wave will rise and this little wave will disappear, but the ocean of existence stays. And if we can identify with the ocean of existence more than we identify with the little wave, we're going to have a much happier life. And of course, there are many levels of spiritual resource, but one is to have a saint, or to have a Buddha, or to have a figure that blesses you, that you feel represents archetypes of love, archetypes of peace, archetypes of really getting the sense of the infinity of existence and the eternity of time. And I won't say much more about that today because that's not our particular focus. But so psychological resources are really, and spiritual resources are really important in the process of healing. So that's a sort of overview. The key to all of this is having a warm, loving, tender heart for yourself. So the most powerful form of healing, of psychological healing, is not some fancy technique that's got a trademark, or having a PhD or in psychology or anything of that sort. The most powerful thing is love. Loving the wounded place in yourself, understanding the wounded place in yourself, hearing the wounded place in yourself, giving attention and patience to the wounded place in yourself. That is the most powerful form of healing. And that's what all the modalities of psychotherapy, the research says, work just about the same. The difference is how much connection there is between the psychotherapist and the client. And so the approach is that the therapist will hold the wounded places in you with love and tenderness and kindness and understanding, teaching you to hold those wounded places in yourself with love, kindness, tenderness, and understanding. And because of that, those wounded places begin to heal and those wounded places begin to melt. And that works for most psychological issues. I'm not talking about medical psychiatrics issues, but I'm talking about for most of us who are pretty successful, we have a good degree of well-being in our lives, we have agency, but somehow we sort of know we're not living as fully as we possibly could. We haven't got quite as much. There's more possible for us, but we have some self-doubt, or we have some lack of self-belief, or we have some wounds, or we have some risk. Where there's something called scoped risk, or reasonable level of risk, which is successful people take risks, but risks that are not too big. People who take risks that are too big get into trouble, and people who don't take enough risks are not very successful. It's like feeling that the world's safe enough to explore, to experiment, to make mistakes, to get it wrong. And so it's that sort of warm, loving heart, which you can imagine as becoming the parent for yourself, being the wise adult parent for yourself, who's really being there for yourself, taking care of yourself, talking to you, explaining things to you, holding you, and also letting you go out and play, but keeping a watchful eye that you don't walk across the road. To let the 5-year-old run in the park and, fall off, fall off the seesaw, but not fall off the very, very high climbing frame until they've got a degree of competence of climbing on the climbing frame. And letting them run around, but not run into the road or not, I have my godson, his mother's a little bit less risk averse than me. I always say to her, look, if your son falls in the river, I'll pull him out pretty quickly. And I think it's quite good for little boys, I'm a bloke, to fall in the river, but you don't want to, you don't want to drown, do you? So it's sort of finding that balance of taking care of yourself and a little bit of risk, but not too much. And then one of the things that we'll do in the meditation, which is really, really such a beautiful thing, which is so first is you probably have abandoned yourself. The bits of you that hurt or are cranky or undermine you, you've tried to push them away. That negative voice in you just try to push it away because it doesn't seem helpful. And so actually we have to come back to that place in ourselves that's wounded and say, I'm sorry I've pushed you away. I want to support you. You're not going to change. Sometimes, someone's rude to me in the street and it doesn't touch my soul. I can just say, oh, let it go. They're having a bad day, and I move on. But if it follows me and I've still got it the next week and the next month and the next year, I need to go back and do some healing. So it's fine to forget things that wound you a little if they don't have an ongoing impact on you. But if they have an ongoing impact, you need to turn around and say, actually, I need to go back and do something about this. I need to hold that place in myself. But there's something really important, which is that, so you've probably abandoned places in yourself. There are probably exiled or orphaned places in yourself. But when you turn that around and you go to that place and you say, I'm going to be your friend, and I can be your friend for life, because you actually are living in the same body. It's like you are living together. All the parts of you are living together. So you really can, at some point, make a commitment to be the really loving, kind, warm-hearted, tender person who supports that delicate place, sensitive place in yourself. And by the way, sensitivity works both ways, doesn't it? Sensitivity can be, it's so easy for me to feel slighted by someone, to be hurt. But it's the same places in me that can sense what's going on in another person. So it's sort of that fine tuning, that sensitivity is also an asset if we can bring some healing to it so that we're just not too triggered all the time. So that's sort of very, very beautiful process of becoming the person who loves you most of all, and who can go to the wounded places and bring healing to those wounding places. The kid in you who just thinks, if my parents are angry with me, it's because there's something wrong with me. And sometimes you have to go back to the kid in you and say, your parents are angry because they've got hard lives. They've got problems. They're treating you like this, not because of you, but because of them. And your wise adult mind goes back and can, say that. And so the earlier the wounding, the more difficult it is to change. So before 3 years old is the foundations. And then there's sort of 3 till 7, that whole period. And then 7 till 14 and 14 to 21. These are just rough numbers. And there are some things that you'll still be sensitive about, that I am still sensitive about, having done years of therapy. But when they get touched, my wise adult mind, my warm tender heart jumps in and cuddles me, holds me. And so therefore I'm less likely to act from that place, or I'm less likely to act out, to behave badly because it's been touched. I'll say, hey, this is something to do with me. Somebody's just said something that triggers, that touches something in me. And, I can feel that, I can, be sweet with myself in the hurt of that, but I don't have to take it out on them, and I don't have to act small or hide or run away or become very aggressive or all of those sorts of things. So really, then we become someone who supports ourselves really well, both in giving our gifts to the world, using all of our strengths and our resources, and also supports ourselves really well in the places where we're cranky or wounded or hurt or can disempower ourselves. But there's a sort of the holy grail, the sort of the rainbow at the end of at the end is that when you've done enough healing, it's increased your compassion, it's increased your self-knowledge, it's increased your wisdom, and then suddenly what were your wounds become a part of your gift to the world. They become a part of your assets. So, there's lots more of my family history I could talk about, but it's made me humble. It's given me a tender heart. I care about people. It's given me my life calling, which is helping people grow. It sounds like quite like, hey, isn't that a cool life calling, helping people blossom? Isn't that, that sounds pretty new age, doesn't it? For me, well, let's put it this way. I blossomed and my brother died of a heroin overdose. So it's, for me, blossoming versus dying is not a trivial thing. It's an important thing. So, so there I have a commitment to helping people blossom, which is my gift to the world. And a part of the passion and energy for that comes from the fact that my brother didn't blossom and died. And, I once, a few years ago, I was in a training room in China, actually, and I had just an image of my brother being there. And it was like, I'm giving this gift to the world on behalf of myself and on behalf of my brother. So the wound is now a part of the gift. And that's a sort of really great place to get to. And you may have to do a lot of work on yourself. And I just want to warn you as well that, sometimes some of that really early stuff, you may still be working on it in your 60s. You can heal a lot of stuff, but some of the really early stuff, you may carry scars or you may carry sensitivity that can get touched at any point in your life. I do not know a single therapist or guru who hasn't got places that can be touched that are painful and that may undermine them or make them sensitive. That's the nature of the human condition. So don't have a view that one day, somebody will come along with a magic wand and we'll all live happily ever after. I think those childhood movies are terrible. We all live happily ever, and they all lived happily ever after. And the worst one is, of course, and they got married and they all lived happily ever after. Getting married is when the trouble starts, isn't it? So, so it's sort of like we can hold ourselves better, and we will still get touched. We'll still be vulnerable, but we can be more comfortable with our vulnerability. And by the way, folks, I'm sure you know this, that when you can share something that's sensitive and vulnerable for yourself, when you feel safe enough to share it with a friend, doesn't that feel good? And doesn't it feel good when a friend tells you their dark secret or difficulty, and you can listen and you hold a soulful space for it? Soul is body, emotion, mind, and spirit all together. It's not just logic. Logic is just a tiny bit of it. And what I'm interested in is helping people have be closer with their soul, with their body, emotion, and spirit, and not so dedicated to mind, which has been developed through our education systems. And so then when you have two people together, soulfully, being vulnerable and honest, that is such a beautiful thing. It's the best thing in friendship, and love, and yeah. So that's sort of, any questions or comments? You can pause for a moment. No, you don't need to jump in if nobody asks any questions. Some people are percolating. It may.
I have a question, please.
Great. Go on, Adele.
So thank you. So thank you for your great talk. I really benefited from it. Thank you.
Right.
My question is these spiritual figures that you mentioned that we
Yes.
can connect with. I know you said you won't go through it in too much detail, but I'm very curious. Do you have any recommendations like where to get started? Um,
I always say, if you can, it's always start close to home. So if there is some element of a tradition that you were brought up with that works for you, then go with that. But for some people, the tradition was so conservative or so difficult or so disconnected from spirit and soul that you can't go with that. And then you have to go somewhere else. But I always say, if you can, start with, your own tradition. And, every one of the world traditions has both, you know, a sort of, there's a problem with religion, let me just say that, which is that it's involved in patriarchy and power structures, and it gets intellectualized. But every tradition has a mystical wing. So I always say go to the mystical wing of the tradition if you can.
right.
But if not, look around, go and explore a lot of different things. And a lot of it's about a teacher. I'm a Buddhist, and I had a Buddhist teacher who was, for more than 20 years. But recently I listened to a podcast from a Christian mystic, and he was so soulful. And I thought, well, I could jump on the plane and go and talk to him. Once you get to that mystical level, the traditions become much less important.
Right.
And they all talk to each other. So it's basically, where is their heart and soul?
All right.
Where
Thank
is
you.
there no guilt? Very sort of relaxed around the rules, not too many rules, and lots of soul. That's what I would say, Adele. Is that helpful?
Mhm. All
Great.
right. Got it. Thank you very much.
Sure, sure. Great that you've got your camera on. It's really great when we can see each other.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
We're trying to create a community here where, we as close as possible to a face-to-face
Mhm.
community. So,
All right. I understand. Thank you.
great, great.
Cool.
Any other questions? Well, by the way, I'll say one more thing about the spiritual. It could just be science. If you look at the Big Bang, if you look back to the Big Bang, some people have a theory that it was a big bounce, that there was a contracting universe that went to a singularity and bounced back out again. And so what was there before that? Another contracting, expanding universe. I mean, just look at the scale of the cosmos, and I get profound awe and touched by the mystery of existence. So that's a way in. Look at the night sky and feel yourself as this tiny little ant in existence. So there are many, many ways, or and and nature is a great way into connecting with the wonder of it all. So, any other questions or comments before we do the meditation? Okay. I'm just look at everyone, look at people who are touched and connected. And that's just really a nice thing to notice.
Yeah, Julian, it's not a question as such, but it's just an observation, right? And it's basically my relationship with you, in a way. And prior
Sounds
to
bad.
no,
Go.
no, prior to when we had this breakout room, you asked us, how we knew you and so on, right? And interestingly, I came across you back in the 1990s when I first started NLP, right? And for some reason, I didn't resonate with you, right, in terms of trainer or whatever, right? But 20 years on now, I find that either I am a different person at a different scale of being, or you are at a different person. You more blossomed, more, and I find when I compare the two, more blossomed, more caring, compassionate, holistic, all that type of thing, right? So this is just an observation of how over time things change and people evolve.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. Hopefully.
Yeah.
It's good to hear. I'm glad to hear that someone thinks I've evolved. So yeah.
Yeah. No,
Um,
it's as I say, it's just fascinating, and also the fact that I may also have moved in the same direction.
yeah.
So who knows how whether it's chicken or egg or chicken.
It doesn't really matter anyway. I mean, I think, there's a beauty and innocence to youth, isn't there? But there's a naivety as well, and a sort of, you think you can conquer the world. And as you get as you fall, that's one of the things about suffering. You fall flat on your face a few times, and you become a bit more humble and a bit more realistic about life. And
Yeah.
we learn from the good things. We also learn from the suffering. It makes us more humble. We learn from the difficult.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else before we do the meditation? Heather, are you pointing at someone? Oh, you're on mute, Heather, so if you...
There's someone called Abrika has got his hand up.
Oh, great. Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Heather. That's really helpful. I hadn't noticed that. Abrika.
Thank you, Heather. So it's Albrecht, but then A is for my last name.
Albrecht.
The initial of the last name, admit, because it's a long name and
Right.
sometimes it doesn't fit. Anyways, two quick questions. I don't know if they're quick, but first one has to do with a lot of times when I work with folks, and particularly for myself as well, that the present moment is not, although it is the only moment, the only real moment, but connecting to it is not anxiety free. Yeah, and then it brings up images, and it's not only mental activity, but it's also physically. It at times it does not feel safe. So inviting someone to connect to the present moment is challenging. So my question is, how do folks, particularly you, Julian, deal with that? And the second one, if there is time, and if not later on, I was helping a nephew of mine who was challenged in different ways, and I was sort of pointing out the stuff that I'm learning from Creative Mind, and he's brilliant, and he brings up this point that isn't this all a sort of it's a way of bypassing the existential angst, that at the end the existential angst is existential. It is an angst, and it's just like trying to massage around it, but the angst is there, and I didn't know what to tell him, because he's a torture tool.
It's a great question. There is, we're all going to die, and we don't know when we're going to die, and and it may not be pretty, that is the truth. And we have life, that's why Buddha sat under 7 years under a tree, and then opened his eyes and said, life has suffering, yeah, life has suffering, and I think that's such a great starting point. Because, and you see this in all the traditions, they address suffering in one way or another, and that's key part of life. And the fact we're going to die. I heard a Christian priest say, as people get older, they're going to turn to God. As you sort of discover your own mortality. So, addressing that question head on about what is all of this about, how do I make meaning of this? That's super important. By the way, and it's not just about living and dying. All the good things you have in your life. Sorry, I'm going to tell you the bad news. All the good things in your life will disappear. If you marry the perfect person, and and you live together, and it's wonderful, and you're still kissing on the street and holding hands when you're 95, one of you will die first. One of you will. My mother said, your father left me. And I said, no, he didn't. He died. She felt abandoned by my father when he died. So all the good things will go. The good news is that all the bad things will change. And so when you learn to really be in the present moment, and you're quite right, there can be feelings in the present moment that we're trying to avoid. That's why people dissociate, because there can be feelings in your body that you want to get away from. So look a lot of Facebook, look a lot of YouTube, do a lot of, get very busy, fill your calendar, work too much. There are lots of ways of disassociating. But a key thing for us to do is to learn, what is this thing called existence? What is this thing called consciousness? How do I handle the flow of existence where, bad things are changing, but good things are changing too? And, I'm not going to, find a tradition through which you can answer that question. Not just intellectually, but experientially. For me, the Buddhist tradition I was in, there was very little language taught. We just sat on cushions, being in the present moment. Find the refuge, take refuge in something beyond the ever-changing moment. Find refuge in something that is bigger than the ever-changing moment. That's bigger than your own life. Take refuge in something that's bigger than your own life. Whether it's Buddha nature, whether it's one of the Abrahamic religions, whether it's an indigenous tradition, native tradition, whether it's Advaita Vedanta in Hinduism, whether it's, whatever it is, doesn't really, to be quite honest, I don't believe it really matters what, as long as it's tolerant and loving and open-minded. Take refuge, find a way of, and it's not in a tradition, don't take refuge in a tradition. Take a refuge in your direct connection with Source. And there are too many men, particularly men who are trying to mediate between you and Source. That is really, that's a great way for them to earn their living, but really you want to have your direct conversation with Source, your direct sense and experience with Source. So look for, and that, so I think it's great. We're going to die, suffering happens. What's this all about? Let's answer those questions. Those spiritual resources that we can access really support the psychological resources. They really work together well. Okay, I've said enough. It's all very, very interesting, but let's do a meditation. Great. Unless there's anything burning, if anybody's about to cry because of something I've said, but I don't think so.
I do have something useful to add, possibly. I'm not sure if that's a useful addition for what we're doing here, but it just really is trying to find a way out of my heart because it's so close to what Albrecht brought up. So, all right, thank you. So basically just that maybe we are here to face all those fears and traumas, because also, I've been coming across this very often. And also today I was listening to something talking about this as well, that all these traumas we go through, maybe it's like the viruses that we get as children, so we build up immunity to it, and maybe those traumas, sufferings, etc. And in some other traditions, as you mentioned, all of them are saying very much the same thing, similar things. So maybe it's just for us to discover our true power and see, who we really are. And I think the way is just finding what's really permanent, as you were saying, rather than the ever-changing stuff and getting attached to them.
Great. That sounds
I hope
great.
that helps. I hope that has any value.
That sounds great. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much.
Sure. So we're going to do a meditation on bringing love and sort of parenting and positive attitude and support to any place in ourselves that hurts or is wounded or is vulnerable or has difficulty. That's what we're going to do in the meditation. And so just make yourselves comfortable. Make sure that you're, sitting in a posture that works easily for you. And just take some time to relax and just notice your experience around you. Just notice what you see. Notice what you hear. Notice what you feel. As direct experience of the moment as we can. So I'm going to take us through a meditation where we first get a body-mind connection, or what could be called a generative state. Then we're going to access resources to do with love and being cared for. And then we're going to bring those resources to our warm, tender hearts. And then we're going to bring our warm, tender hearts to any place in ourselves that hurts or has been undermined or lacks self-belief or is disempowered in some way. And then we're going to perhaps make some commitments around how we take care of ourselves in the future. So, easy method to get body-mind connection is to start by noticing 4 things that you hear. And my formula is that I listen outside my window. Is there any sound I can hear outside the house? And then I listen in the house. Are there house sounds? And then I listen in the room. Perhaps there are computer sounds or actually, I'd listen to more than 4 things. I also listen, are there sounds in my body? And then I just listen for my internal dialogue. Is there a voice in my head? What's it going on about now? It's like a radio station with a strange voice. Or at a networking meeting, it's someone who's talking to you. You don't have to believe what they say, but you can be curious about it. It's not you. You're much, much more than that voice. But sometimes you think it's you, but actually it's just one part of your experience. And so then 4 things that you feel. And again, a tip is to pick a place on your skin and notice that feeling, whether it's clothing against the skin or air temperature. One muscle, pick a muscle and really feel that muscle. And then any emotional feeling, an emotional feeling in the trunk of your body, your throat, your heart, your solar plexus, your belly, your sex. And then one more thing that you feel. And then, if your eyes are closed, notice what you see with your closed eyes. It would be the darkness of your eyelids, perhaps specks of light on your eyelids, but also images in your mind's eye. And of course, if your eyes are open, it's external images. Notice 4 things that you see. And 3 things that you hear. and three things. Notice three different things that you feel. And three things that you see. And two things that you hear. And two things that you feel. And two things that you see. And one thing that you hear. One thing that you feel. One thing that you see. And it can always be really good to put one's attention on one's breathing, on your breathing, and notice the detail of, in the in-breath, how the hairs on your nose move, and how it goes down the throat to the belly. And pauses and goes back out again. And that's a good place to put your attention, or to keep broadening into what you see, what you hear, and what you feel. It's just so that your attention is taken away from thinking, that you pay attention to much, much more than thinking. You keep broadening into your experience, broadening and deepening. But I'd like to invite you to think of someone, either from the present, from the near past, or the distant past, who believes in you, cares about you. And for some people, that would be a spiritual figure. For others, there might have been a teacher or a friend or an aunt or a grandfather who really believed in you and cared about you, perhaps even loved you. And see their face, hear their voice, and feel how that feels receiving their care, their love, their belief in you. And some people may find that having got one person who believes in them, loves them, cares about them, other people come to mind. And it could be someone who you've had a long friendship with over many years, or relationship with. Or it could have been the teacher who just once said to you, "You're worth it, you can do it." Or it could be some sense of a higher power that when you think of it, you feel the support, you feel the care, you feel the love, you feel the energy. Or it could be a figure from a childhood book. I know someone whose key resources are Gandalf and Galadriel from The Lord of the Rings, because she herself is something like a wizard. Or it might be a pet that you once had. So you make sure that you have at least one figure that believes in you, cares about you, loves you. I like friends. It can be even someone who was perhaps like an ex of yours, there was a period of time when they just expressed that love so clearly. That can be really nice, as long as there's not too much pain associated. And this process in itself of developing these psychological resources, this circle of supporters, it's a better word, is really an important exercise that if you do this every day will really increase the quality of your life. Everywhere I travel, everywhere I go with this circle supporting me. And you can't have enough people in this circle, so over time you'll find that new figures appear. And so feel all of their love and their care and their support in your heart. Feel it in your body. So also you've got your warm heart supported by this circle of resources. And you've also got all the experience of your life so far, your wise adult mind, who's learnt from all the good things that have happened to you in your life, are empowered by all the good things that have happened in your life. And you've also learnt, perhaps painfully, from all the difficulties, the disappointments of your life. You have more experience and wisdom now than you've ever had before. So now with your wise adult mind and your warm, tender heart, bring your wise adult mind and your warm, tender heart to any place in you that hurts, or a place in you that is disempowered, or a place in you that gets too angry. Or doesn't believe in yourself. Bring your warm heart and your wise adult mind to that place in you and be curious. We're not trying to change anything. We're not really trying to heal anything. We're just being curious, bringing love and attention to this place in ourselves. It might be something that was recent, or it might be something long ago. You might know it because it hurts. Or you might know it because there's lack of self-belief or self-confidence or trust in the world, trust in other people, or difficulty in relationships. One of the signs is a sort of difficulty that occurs for you in many places. You know, like the man who says all women are this, or the woman who says all men are that, but actually it's something in you. So notice something that needs healing. And if possible, be curious about the location of that in your body. Is it a feeling somewhere in your belly, or your heart, or your throat, or your lower belly, or your solar plexus? And does it have an age? If you were to say it had an age, what number comes to mind? It can be quite useful to get a sense of, was this experience, or this feeling, or this disempowering belief, when did it get formed? So the age of this feeling. And then the wise adult mind and the warm, tender heart can bring itself to this part of you in an age-appropriate way. To just be so sweet and stroke and hold the baby. To sit down next to the 4 or 5-year-old, be really present, talk with them in simple language. Or appropriate for the 7-year-old or 14-year-old or 21-year-old. So like be with them in the way that you would as a wise parent. If you were really a wise, loving parent to this part of you, how would you sit down with them? And is there something that's happened that gives them this disempowerment or this wound? Is it something on the outside that's created this? And just You can be fierce as the wise adult mind, not fierce with the child or the younger you, but fierce about life. You might say, the way that they treated you was not okay. You might say that. You might say, they had problems in their life. They may have been your parents, but they had their problems. They weren't perfect. You are a beautiful kid. You're a beautiful boy. You're intelligent. You're sweet. You're a creative girl. You can feel good about yourself. I'm here to help you feel good about yourself. The best way to grow is to feel good about yourself. Then you'll grow naturally and easily. So you might find that you need to dialogue with this place in yourself. You know, it's not true that you were unlovable. It's true that your mother was depressed and had to, had spent a lot of time in the hospital. It's true that your father was always working. It's not that he didn't love you. He thought food on the table, or he didn't talk to you because his father didn't talk to him. So the wise adult mind can understand a pattern and explain it in the language of the child, but and say, I will listen to you. I will be curious. I will give you what you need. I will be here with you. And that part of you may say, well, you've never been with me so far, so why would I think that you're going to support me and care about me and love me right now? Quite legitimate thing for the part of you to say. And you say, well, I'm going to start trying. You have to be humble. I'm going to sit with you now. I'm going to return and visit. We're doing a single exercise now. But if this is working for you, this is something to come back to, possibly every day, at least every week, when you have a moment to go and be with this place in yourself. Relationships don't happen in a single session. You don't become friends on the first meeting. You may need many meetings to really become friends with this place in you. To really understand what it is this part of you wants, what it's longing for, and to say it's totally okay for you to have what you long for. You may or may not get it. You didn't get it then, probably. Probably you didn't get it then. But the longing for it is really welcome, and I will do what I can to give you some of this. I will give you the support. I will be sweet. I will be patient. You may require a lot of patience with a part of you that's got stuck over many years. It may not want to budge or open up or peek out, maybe hiding behind the sofa or the curtains. That was my favorite hiding place, behind the curtains. You have to just sit and be. The fact that you're connecting is the most important thing. Then slowly this part in you will begin to trust you more. And you can play with them. Or you can say words of love. Or you can be fierce, not with them, but on their behalf. It wasn't okay what happened. That was not the way for an adult to behave. That was not the way for a school teacher to behave. That was not okay. You were not wrong, they were wrong. Sometimes we have to be fierce to protect our children. The orphaned child in us. All the parts of ourselves. Sometimes, as a therapist, the job of the therapist is to be angry about what happened to you. The child is never to blame. So just bringing your sweetness and your attention to that place in yourself. And just, if this is useful and helpful, say to that part of you, I will come and talk to you some more. I'll meet with you again. Let's spend time together after this. Imagine in the future building more of a relationship between your wise adult mind and your warm, tender heart and this place in yourself. When you're ready, I want you to just gradually orientate through the room. Orientate to this room, to the screen. And we're going to do an exercise in groups of 3. Where we just, one person talks for 10 minutes, sharing their experience of the meditation, and the others listen with love. The others really pay attention. No advice, no coaching, no telling people what they should do, just listening. I will do the timing and I will let you know when each 10 minutes is finished. So one person will talk about their experience. The others will listen with love and they can say, tell me more, but they can't give advice, they can't sell services or tell them that they need a therapist or anything of that sort. So you've got groups of 3 starting now. You've got an invitation and I will do the timing for you. Welcome back. How are you guys doing? How was that for you, Laura?
How was that for me? It was funny. I didn't know what I was going to say at all at first, and then I just spoke, and things came.
Great. That's a great way to do things.
Rather than thinking, oh gosh, trying to think about what I'm going to say as other people are talking.
Yes.
I just thought, I've no idea what I'm going to say, and I'm actually just going to concentrate on listening to other people, and then when it comes to my turn, I'll just be with whatever, but not knowing what I'm going to say, and that's fine.
That's great. So that's spontaneous. It rising from the body and from the unconscious rather than from the mind or the intellect. So yeah. How was that for you?
It's Paul.
Oh, sorry, Paul. Yeah, Paul.
Yeah, sorry. I was just an instant response that it was both interesting, fascinating, and worthwhile. I hope for the others too. But we ended we had to finish before the third partner had really had a chance to clarify things.
Well, that's sad, but anyway. Great, thank you, Paul. There was someone else talking at the same time as you, Paul. Who was that?
That was me. Yeah. I just wasn't sure if anyone was going to contribute or say anything. So I was just like, okay, let me say, although it wasn't much, I just wanted to say it was very enjoyable.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, it was very enjoyable as well, your meditation as well. So thank you. Yeah.
I had a very beautiful sharing of vulnerability, and and for me, it just continued the work and my journey. So thank you, Julian.
Beautiful, fantastic. Great. What else? What was it like listening? I'd be interested to hear what listening's like. Great, Katie, were you getting to it?
Oh yeah, I suppose I was just going to share that actually I think I'm a bit vulnerable at the moment, and I think I always need reminding that I have to love myself when I'm in a dark place. Yeah.
Right.
And even though I used to work with clients or myself, and I knew that for them, but I don't always remember for me. So that was very helpful.
That's what the wounded healer, we're all wounded healers.
I know.
Basically, any time that you have a negative voice, that is not a coaching voice. That's not a helpful voice.
No.
That is a disempowering voice. There should never be a negative voice. It's not useful. The only one application is if you carry out an activity and you're sitting down and you're saying what went well, what went better, then you can apply some constructive criticism. But most of the time, any voice that's not constructive is not coaching you. It's not helpful. It's not a coaching voice. Yeah. Thank you, Katie. So how are you feeling right now?
Well, my negative voice against myself was set off by some stuff that somebody said about me, 2 people really, and that feels quite unjust.
In the group?
Yeah.
No,
not in the group. No, in my previous life, in my previous work life.
Right.
Yeah. So that all of that drags up all sorts of old miserable stuff. Yeah.
Really great. And so really great to get what is it that triggers us and then go back. Sometimes if somebody says something to me today and I get really triggered in a bad way, that's probably a sign that it was some big wound from earlier in life, because usually what the person says to me today could be, it could be water off the duck's back. If they say something mean and it really gets me, it's a sign probably that there's something historical wound there. Thank you, Katie. I love the way around your name is on the screen.
Oh, great head, Katie.
Yeah, I think that's much better. I think you should make Katie
Well,
your
funnily enough, my brothers used to call me Greaty Katie, and it started again recently because my great niece can't really say Great Auntie Katie, so it's easier for everybody to say Greaty Katie. So the world goes round in cycles.
Thank you, Greaty Katie. What else? Any other comments or sharings from the exercise?
Can I speak?
Yes, Kimberly.
I just thought it was, the whole subject today were things that I've just really been thinking about really recent, like right now and recently. And so it's just so many points today were just really hit home.
Right.
But during the breakout group, it was really interesting how much other people were saying I resonated with in their, the things they were talking about. And so I just found that really interesting, whether it was fear, whether it was self-doubt, whether it was the way they were brought up as a child. It was very interesting.
Yeah,
so thank you.
The way that modern society brings up children does psychological damage because of the pace of life, the pressure on the parents, the fact that very often it's just parents on their own who are trying to bring you up rather than a whole village. Really, children need a whole village to bring them up, not just one set of parents. There are so many things in modern life that mean that almost everybody has had some sort of disruption to their natural separation process and their growing up process. It's great. It's great hearing other people. Then you think, God, I'm not the only crazy person around here. Wounded. Yeah. I'm not the only wounded person around here. Everybody's wounded. Some people cover it very, very well. Some people make it into successful careers. But it doesn't. But they don't feel better on the inside. It doesn't make them feel better on the inside. What else?
Can I say something, Julia?
Sure, Beth. Lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you too. I think that's such a thing that people cover their wounds really well. And it's something I think I have been guilty of, which is one of the things that brought me into this. And as a sort of old, inverted commas, older person, I'm not that old, but guilt doesn't serve me. Could I have parented better? Well, hang on a minute. that is not a useful guilt. That's not
That's right.
serving anything
That's right.
whatsoever. So pick it up, deal with it, look at it, love it, and say, and what are you doing today?
Yeah,
And
that's
I
right.
just love the way you took us into various different things. So I just want to say one hello and two thank you.
Great, thank you. Prema, did you have something to say?
Yes, Julian. But do you want to say what you want to
No,
after?
you go first.
Okay. Well, I was grateful for your prelude to our meditation and the meditation itself. The prelude was very good for me because it put into perspective something what I've been trying to deal with, and the meditation helped me further. So I appreciate that, and it was positive, processing of my childhood.
Great.
Thank you.
Good, that's beautiful. Tonight, one of the differences in the session tonight is that at 6 o'clock, I'm going to run a 45-minute session on Tools for Personal Transformation, which is the 8-week closed group course, which starts on the 1st of November, going through life calling, going through putting your life calling together with strengths, looking at the vision for your life, healing emotional wounds, and creating positive new beliefs. All of that in a closed group in much more detail and much deeper than we've been doing here. So I want to end now. Actually, it'll only give us a minute, but for those of you who want to stay, to stay online, and other people will join us, and we will. I'll just talk to you about that program. So if you want to go, now's a good time to go. Otherwise, we'll just take a minute's break, and then I'll continue at 6 o'clock. Great to have you here. Lovely to see you today. Next week's session is on how to make it happen in the world.